With each passing day, we're inching ever closer to the release of Daredevil Born Again. So we thought it would be the perfect time to take a look back at what started it all. Netflix's Daredevil Season 1.
Yes, and it's been officially canonized. And so Daredevil Born Again is, in fact, a continuation of the story in a lot of ways. It's kind of like a soft reboot.
It's gonna be effectively Season 4.
Same characters, similar plot lines, similar power struggles, but we want to look back at where it all began.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Thomas.
I'm Merlin.
Together we're the Comic Lads, and today we're taking a look at Daredevil Season 1.
Season 1. This is going to be a 2-part retrospective series. Stay tuned next week for part 2. We're going to be looking at Season 2 and Season 3 and our final conclusion on the series as a whole. But of course, as always, question of the week before we begin and share our own thoughts. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Daredevil Season 1 and the show as a whole?
Yeah, where does it rank among your favorite superhero shows of all time? Because I feel like it's gotta be up there for like almost everybody, right?
I mean, those that have watched it can attest to its absolute glory.
100%. And before we get into it, guys, make sure to drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. Subscribe if you have not already. Become one with us, the lads.
Help us conquer the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah.
If we're Daredevil, the YouTube algorithm is Fisk, but we're never winning.
Yeah. But the season never ends.
Exactly. Starting off, Daredevil does such a masterful job at balancing both past and present in telling Matt's origin story to becoming the devil of Hell's Kitchen. Episode 1, the first very scene we have is Matt getting into the accident that blinds him, seeing this little child Matt getting blinded and clutching onto his dad and screaming I can't see.
I can't see.
I can't see.
Jesus.
And then cutting straight to modern day Matt, in the confessional booth.
Giving that fucking monologue.
Yeah.
Bro, Charlie Cox is up there with some of the best superhero castings of all time. He's up there with, in my opinion, with the likes of RDJ as Iron Man, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, etc.
The speech he gives and the confession he gives to the father, in the confessional stand, it sets up his arc through Season 1 so perfectly. And it's such a badass scene where he's talking about asking for forgiveness.
Yeah, and he's not even asking for forgiveness for things that he's done. He's asking for forgiveness for what he's about to do.
I'm not seeking penance for what I've done, Father. I'm asking forgiveness for what I'm about to do.
I know.
And then it cuts to him taking down Turk and his human trafficking ring. So sick.
And it's the perfect opening scene just to get you absolutely hooked into the series.
And it does, I think.
But just getting further into Matt's origin story, we gotta talk about how they portrayed his relationship with his father in the past.
Oh my god, it's so beautiful, and it's such a great use of showing and not telling with their relationship, where you feel that he's a single father, and he doesn't really know how to raise this kid the way he wants to raise him. He doesn't want Matt to grow up like him. All he does is just push him into his books and make sure he's studying, while all he's doing is, throwing prize fights for mobsters. It's so gut-wrenching.
It is gut-wrenching, and, their relationship, I think, is an absolute highlight of the show, especially in the scenes. Like you said, he's constantly trying to push Matt to not be like him.
Yeah.
But there are a few particular scenes, where his father will come home beat up and Matt will stitch him up.
Yeah.
And, give him a bottle of whiskey or scotch to drink to take the pain away. Obviously that's not the traditional ideal representation of what a father should be, letting your own kid patch you up and give you booze.
But they need each other.
Yeah.
And they help each other. There are a lot worse relationships you could have.
The love is completely and 100% there.
Yeah.
And I love the through line of balancing their origin story for the first few episodes of the show and showcasing that Matt is more like his father than his father wanted him to be.
Yeah.
There's this great moment where he's talking to the priest about, the Murdock boys. They got the devil in them.
Every now and then he'd get hit and something inside of him would snap. My grandmother, she was the real Catholic. She used to say, be careful of the Murdock boys. They got the devil in them.
Dude, one of the hardest lines ever. The writing in the show is impeccable.
It's so good, man.
And it's kind of this tragic moment where you realize, despite
Jack's efforts, he is his father's son.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, I think we also got to talk about Matt's place in the lawful, orderly world.
Yeah.
Because he does kind of become both things that his father was either pushing away from becoming
or pushing him into becoming.
Exactly. In the present, Matt's fighting with his identity and how he wants to actually help the world.
Yeah.
Through law and order, beating up criminals to a bloody pulp.
Yeah, and they portray the dichotomy between his two lives so well, where it's so drastically different seeing him in a courtroom and really in his element, because he feels like an unbeatable lawyer. And it's so cathartic when Matt is able to get a win against the system without, using his fists.
Yeah, and much like his father, in those moments, you're almost thinking to yourself, like, dude, give up your life as Daredevil. Like, you can do good as a lawyer, too. Yeah. But, of course, there's so much corruption wherever you go in life that he realizes he needs that evil side of him. Like he says, the devil in him.
Absolutely.
To come out and correct some wrongs that can't be done lawfully.
Speaking of corruption, should we just get into the white whale in the room?
We've laid the kind of groundwork of Matt's struggle throughout this series and his excellent origin story portrayed in the past and present with him becoming the devil of Hell's Kitchen. But we soon get to see just how necessary it is for Daredevil to be in this story and in this universe.
Yeah.
Throughout the show, Matt, both as Daredevil and as Matt Murdock, tackles different cases and solves different wrongs. But all the while this happens, you know that there's a bigger player in the background who's pulling the strings.
Yeah. Once you first get introduced to this cabal of colorful New York gangsters, their leader is missing, and you're like, yeah, I fucking know who it is.
Yeah, well, anyone who knows Daredevil whatsoever knows it's gonna be Fisk.
Yeah, I know it's Kingpin. I can't fucking wait for him to show up.
Yeah, Kingpin in the first few episodes doesn't even appear.
But you feel his presence.
You feel his presence, and they set him up as this ominous, deadly force.
Yeah.
And when he finally does come on screen, he is just a force of nature, man.
Vincent D'Onofrio, one of the best castings we've ever gotten.
Not just season 1, but all the seasons that, we're going to talk about. There is this rivalry and this kind of like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
We know which one the immovable object is.
Yeah, oh my god, bro. And Fisk really does become the other side of the show.
He's not just a big bad. He's not just a mustache-twirling evil type villain. There's a deep sadness and a brokenness to his character that they portray so well. And honestly, for me, it's like the hardest episode to watch in the show is the one with his backstory.
Definitely.
It's fucking brutal.
Definitely. And, we talked about Matt having a lot of great scenes that take place in the past.
Yeah.
Laying out the foundation and character work for how he's become how he is. But the way they do it also with Vincent D'Onofrio, like with his Kingpin character, Wilson Fisk, as a kid being brutally fucking abused by his father.
Yeah, and being forced to watch his father abuse his mom too. When he kills his dad, it's like the most cathartic thing ever.
Yeah, because throughout those flashbacks, his dad is constantly pushing him and, giving like you're just a big baby, you need to man up kind of thing. And Wilson Fisk does man up, but he also turns into a monster at the same time.
He does, and you really can't blame him.
Yeah, you almost sympathize with him.
You do.
But then you cut back to what he's doing in the present, and he's slamming freaking people's heads and doors.
There is that. But also, bro, like, not only did he kill his dad, his mom right after is like, get the saw.
Yeah, let's chop up your father into little bits.
And then you're like, no, I get it. Do your thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Fisk and Matt both come from these pretty broken origins.
Absolutely.
And backgrounds, and seeing how they use that anger and that hatred to funnel and channel their wills, respectively on either ends of the spectrum, and how they both clash when that happens.
Yeah.
It's an absolute highlight of the show. I do think we gotta take a second to not just talk about the villains, though, but talk about some of the side characters.
100%. Because every character and every other casting in this show shines so well. I think we should start with talking about Karen. Deborah Ann Wall as Karen.
She's incredible.
Is incredible.
Yeah. I keep saying standouts in the show in terms of characters.
But they all do.
They all do.
Yeah.
And the show's title is Daredevil, but for all intents and purposes, this is a show about all these characters and how each of them contribute a different puzzle piece to the overall story.
Yes.
Karen, like you said, such a standout. She's obviously introduced in the show as a victim of, one of Fisk's schemes.
She's framed for murder after discovering like some pension fund at Union Allied.
Yeah, it's all just corruption,
bureaucracy.
Exactly, bad things going on behind the scenes, but she's actually taken up as a client. The first client of Nelson and Murdock, attorneys at law.
Oh.
And she becomes, a pivotal part of Matt's life and the overall story.
Yeah.
And speaking of, Nelson and Murdock, attorneys at law, dude,
my fucking boy Foggy.
A lot of Daredevil throughout the show is taken from an adaptation of Frank Miller's run in the comics.
Yes.
I read that run after I watched the show.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at how much of a kind of bumbling moron Foggy is in the comics.
Really?
Like, he's good-natured,
Yeah.
but he's kind of considered like the idiot between the two. Like, Matt's considered the smart one.
Yeah, that sucks.
It sucks, and it caught me off guard because in the show, he is such a great character. He still has those endearing qualities of the everyman and blue-collar worker.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he also plays the role of the comic relief, but he's not, like, saddled with it. He adds a perfect amount of levity and light in each scene that keeps the show from being too grim and gritty.
yeah, but it's not like shitty, quippy kind of CU lines.
No, it's like genuinely, like, hilarious, great dry humor.
Yeah, he talks like how me and you would joke around.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like a, well, that just happened kind of moment. He really stands out as Matt's biggest supporter.
Yeah, such a great friend. Not to be outdone, like you said, how in the comics he's kind of like a dumbass. He's a great lawyer.
Oh my god. I mean,
Incredible.
not just in season 1, but in the later seasons also.
Yeah.
While Matt's too busy being distracted by his life as Daredevil or recovering from injuries or what have you,
He has to pick up the bootstraps of Nelson and Murdock.
yeah, Foggy takes the reins, and a lot of the times in those trials by fire, no pun intended, when Foggy is put into that seat, he shines brightest.
He does.
And, you know, I love that dichotomy between their relationship. A lot throughout season 1, Foggy doesn't know about Matt's second life as Daredevil.
Yeah.
And that creates tension between them because, like we just said, he's picking up the reins and having to take the lead on a lot of cases.
And he's also forced to see his best friend, who is blind, come to work with bruises and cuts and shit, and he's not being told what's happening.
Yeah, and at the same time, he's giving him the cold shoulder and telling him to mind his own business. And it's like, dude, you're my best friend of like 7 years.
This is not fair.
And we're not only are we best friends, but we're also equal partners.
Yeah.
And working together and trying to build a future.
And the same goes with Karen, too. Like, they have such a strong triangle of friendship and camaraderie and trust, and it really hurts when you feel like Matt is breaking it.
Matt, much like he is in the comics, in the show, he's not always a good person.
He could be a fucking asshole.
He is a fucking asshole sometimes in the show.
And it breaks you because all you want to see is him open up to Foggy and be his friend and open up to Karen about his feelings, because the chemistry between Charlie Cox and Deborah Ann Wall as Matt and Karen is palpable, bro. And Matt is such a douchebag.
Throughout all this tension and buildup of him trying to take down Wilson Fisk, both through the law and outside of it, it does push him away from these really great central key figures. But I will say, in doing that, they also have to turn elsewhere, and we get introduced to another absolute banger of a character,
The GOAT.
Ben Urich.
Oh my god.
Ben Urich in the comics, especially in Frank Miller's run, which, you know, this show is heavily, heavily based on.
Yeah.
He is the co-lead in a lot of Frank Miller Daredevil stories.
Yes, not to be outdone in this show, Vondi Curtis Hall as Ben Urich steals every scene that he's in. He is fucking sensational.
He's sensational, and he brings a maturity to, you know, the trio of Foggy, Karen, and Matt, because they are very much the new kids on the block.
They are good at their shit, but
They're a bit naive.
they're still like getting their druthers, you know?
Exactly, and Ben Urich, like you said, he's been around the block, and he knows how steeped in corruption and how immovable the system truly is at its root. And he has some great moments in the show where he warns them of this, but them in their kind of like naivety notion of, oh, let's just go, you know, we gotta sock the bad guys and we gotta take them down because that's the right thing to do. He brings a sense of ground realism to the show.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's not that easy.
And he brings his expertise and his years of experience fighting this corruption and his knowledge from having actually taken down different elements of corruption in the city throughout his career. When he comes in, you're like, shit, we might actually have a chance against these guys.
Yeah, and he brings all of his expertise, all of his knowledge, and different angles to try to solve this whole Fisk conundrum.
Yeah.
There's a really tragic moment, you know, I just mentioned that when he's introduced, he basically warns, don't push this envelope too hard, because there are lethal consequences to this. Like, this goes far deeper than you think, and it's through them pushing him to be more righteous that ends up leading to his tragic death in the end, which I think is just so fucking sad.
It is truly the saddest thing in this entire show. He was taken from us too fucking soon.
100%. Karen keeps pushing him at a certain point, like, we gotta get to the root of this, and he's always hesitant about it, and when he finally decides to go on this crusade, it leads to his death.
Yeah, and it's so fucked and it makes you so angry with Karen. That's the great thing about this show, is that it's not just trying to make you love all its characters. It's making you experience that whole circle of emotions, because Karen says she has a lead on Kingpin and she doesn't tell him what it is. And then she takes him to go see Kingpin's mom.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, this is the most powerful man in New York City, the most dangerous man in New York City, pulling the strings. Mama's off the table. And so he, of course, finds this out and kills Ben Urich. And, you know, it's a great moment in the show where you realize there are serious consequences for standing up for what's right and trying to do the right thing.
Yep.
You know, there's so many characters to talk about. I think we also have to talk about, while Ben Urich is helping out, you know, the trio of Nelson, Murdock, and Karen Page.
Yeah.
We also have a helper on Fisk's side, and one of the absolute standouts of the show also.
Toby Leonard Moore as Wesley crushes every scene, dude. He is so slimy, but charismatic.
He is so charismatic.
Cool.
He's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And he kind of acts as Fisk's right-hand man throughout the whole show.
Yeah.
And, you know, he commands each scene as much, if not more, than any other of the amazing star-studded cast we have here.
He does, and you get to see, after just a couple episodes of watching it, you're like, Fisk couldn't do half the shit that he's doing without Wesley's help.
Yeah, and there's a really interesting plotline that's introduced throughout the show where Fisk falls in love and finds a reason to try to have some good in his life. And while he's trying to balance his love life and life of crime, Wesley ends up fucking daddying up a lot of the time and handling business that
does.
Fisk is too occupied to handle.
Wesley stands on business, and he also is such a great friend to Fisk, and you root for them, you know, like as much as you don't root for anything that Fisk does, because it's all horrible, their friendship is palpable, and it's nice to see, because Fisk doesn't have anyone.
Much like Ben Urich dies, Wesley also does.
Yeah.
And on the other side of, you know, being good has consequences, it shows that being evil does too. It's a sad moment in the show, because honestly, both these characters, I feel like, could have contributed so much more to the future seasons.
I agree. Like, Ben Urich's death is so gut-wrenching, but it feels earned. Leslie's feels premature.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the plot and the characters and the different struggles they go through throughout season 1. We cannot do this review without talking about the freaking fight scenes.
This show has the best action in any superhero live action thing. I don't care. I think that's okay to say.
It's a bold statement, but I can't deny it. And something that they do particularly well with their action is the actual movement itself is one side of it, but the way it's filmed is a completely other beast that they have conquered.
Yes.
You know?
Around like the time that the show came out, we all grew super tired of like the 2000s style of like super cutty jump cut, like disorienting action scenes where you can't really tell what anyone's doing in the fight scene, and we graduated to these still shots that encapsulate the whole fight, and you can see each and every movement.
Definitely, and obviously referring to one of those legendary scenes like the hallway fight scene.
Come on, dude.
When Daredevil is trying to, you know, take down a child
Kidnapping ring,
smuggling ring, and it's all shot in one take. The people working on the show were so dedicated to their craft.
Yeah.
Not just the stunt people that have to get everything perfectly in one take, but also the camera work, probably hundreds of takes
for sure,
to get it all perfect, but the fact that they stuck to it and they were able to capture it, and it looks as good as it does.
It looks incredible. In Daredevil fight scenes, these guys are getting battered and they're getting tired. People need a breather.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not just a 1-2 knockout. You know, you have to slowly chip away at someone's physical and emotional morale.
Yeah.
And get them down to beat them, and that's exactly what Daredevil does. You know, he has these super senses, but he is just a man at the end of the day.
He is still a guy.
Yeah, and that makes for some of the most brutal fight scenes ever. Kind of coming to a conclusion about all this, the show has a great character arc. Matt fully embraces the Daredevil persona by the end of the show.
Yes.
He gets his first rendition of the red suit. Looks a bit goofy.
Yeah, but they fix it right away.
They fix it. It appears in the last 10 minutes of the last episode.
Yeah, and no matter how it looks, it feels so earned, and you're so fucking hyped to see it. and it's in the dark, so it's okay.
When he finally embraces that full side of himself, he's finally able to take down Kingpin.
And it's awesome.
It is such a great fight. He's embracing the devil, but on the other side of that, he also embraces his life as Matt. And, both sides of his life finally come together to take down Kingpin, and they're not at odds with each other anymore.
What a fucking show, dude.
If you're excited about Born Again and you haven't watched this show yet, you need to watch it.
You need to.
Just to have a deeper appreciation for what these properties and IPs can be when they're at their best.
Yes, agreed.
I would say Daredevil Season 1 is a flawless season.
I agree.
And I don't say that lightly.
It's a 10 on 10.
It's a 10 on 10. I cannot think of a single thing that's wrong with it. And I would put it up there with the likes of Spectacular Spider-Man, Batman the Animated Series.
Daredevil Season 1 is peak superhero content.
It's peak superhero content. All that being said, next week, second part of this video will go live.
Yep.
Talking about Season 2, Season 3, and our final thoughts on the show before Daredevil Born Again comes out.
If you enjoyed the video, guys, leave a like. Like we said, it really helps us out. We love you so much.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.